Hello, friends. Welcome to the Logistics of Logistics podcast. My name is Joe Lynch. Thank you so much for joining us today. On the Logistics of Logistics, I talk to experts in logistics and transportation, warehousing, fulfillment, supply chain, and of course, technology. And during these interviews, I'm always the one asking the dumb questions. I ask the dumb questions so you don't have to. Today's topic is fulfillment for emerging e-commerce brands with my friend Dave Gulas. Dave is the co-founder and president of EZDC 3PL, a warehousing and fulfillment business that specializes in e-commerce fulfillment. There's been a lot of growth and turmoil in the warehousing and fulfillment space. Many companies are realizing that they don't want to work with small customers because they require extra attention and communication. Dave and his team at EZDC built their company to support emerging e-commerce brand. Their strategy is to grow right along with their customers. If you're interested in the e-commerce fulfillment space, please take a listen to my conversation with Dave. How's it going, Dave?
Hey, going great, Joe. Thanks for having me.
I'm happy that I pronounced your name right this time, so it's Gulas. So, Dave, please introduce yourself and your company, where you're calling from today.
Yeah, my name's Dave Gulas. I am president and co-founder of EZDC 3PL. We're headquartered in Southern Kentucky, just outside of Bowling Green. And then we also have a second location in Maryland, right outside Baltimore. We're about to open up a third location in New Jersey. And then me personally, I am in Michigan.
Yep, Dave, we just had lunch for the first time. So we've been talking for a few years. I know we were talking during COVID. You live about 40 minutes from me. So we finally had lunch the other day. We've been talking about it for a while.
Yeah. Glad we could connect. And it's like that sometimes too with people, right? We're busy, we're doing a lot of stuff. And even though we're close, you don't always make time to actually see someone personally.
Oh, yeah. And Grace Sharkey from Freightwaves, she's up in Lansing, like not too far from me. I'm like 40 minutes from her too. She still hasn't been on the podcast. So that sometimes happens, but finally getting on the podcast. I was on your podcast not so long ago. What is the name of your podcast?
My podcast is called Beyond Fulfillment. And I started that 7 months ago or so. And we spotlight the entrepreneurial journey and just talk to a variety of entrepreneurs, both in logistics and outside of it, and just talk about what their story's been like, their journey, what they've learned along the way, and try to give actionable advice that people can use within their own business journey.
Yep. And I know you told me you get lots of business that way. So I know podcasts can work. I'm happy every time I hear a podcaster say, yeah, I'm getting customers this way.
Yeah, it's funny. That was like a big inflection point, even with our company, where we started to close a lot more deals quickly. And it's not always directly attributable, but what I see too is in logistics, especially, so many 3PLs operate as faceless, nameless companies. And for a brand,
Yes,
it's a very important decision, like where they're going to send their inventory and can I trust these people? And when they see me posting videos practically every day, it feels like that even if they're not watching all of them, they see that I'm talking to all these people and I'm not hiding, I'm out here, and that's a sign of trust.
yeah, people get to know you that way. They can get to know and trust you. And by the way, you're so true when you say it's hard to say that opportunity came from the podcast. But I call people who are on I'll call you next week and say, hey, Dave, what happened from you being on the podcast? I know you'll get business. People usually do, but it's because a lot of times the marketers who you talk to will say, yeah, but who listens? I'm like, lots of people listen, but I don't know exactly who's listening that day. And I don't know that they're going to reach out to you. I know there's a tendency now to say, I want to know their email address and their phone number before they listen. You're like, yeah, that'd be nice, but that's not the way it works. So I'm looking forward to talking to you about this topic. Before we hit record, while we were prepping, we talked about some of the challenges that the small e-commerce brands have. So we saw e-commerce blow up during COVID, kind of some of them taking a step back since then. But what's also happened is a lot of these smaller e-commerce companies, as they're getting out of that place in their life cycle where they're like, we need help. We need somebody to help us. We're doing this out of the garage or out of our spare bedroom, out of a basement. We need some help. And bigger companies are often saying, we can't work with you. We can't work with you because you require too much hand holding, too much guidance. You don't have a big enough ops team. And I get it. You get to certain companies, everybody builds for their optimal customer. But there's a lot of companies, and I was just telling you this, I was just at a warehousing company in the Detroit metro area who told me there's not enough space available right now. And small companies are getting booted out of warehousing spaces on a regular basis.
Yeah, and that's one thing. When we first started EZDC, we talked to a lot of people, and we had consultants that would tell us, you don't want small companies. You should have a minimum, and you should really stay away from like these emerging brands too, because they're going to take up a lot more of your time, and they're going to be high maintenance, and it's just not a good move. And where we come from within the pharmaceutical space, we're used to dealing with independent pharmacies that are in their store working and have the odds up against them from the chains, and they're trying to serve the community and their customers. And a lot of times things come up and they need an order to ship that's past the deadline, or they need something in a hurry, or they need a special circumstance. And that always requires a lot of flexibility, and everything's urgent, everything's going overnight. So we're just accustomed to operating in that type of environment. So with the COVID boom, we saw a lot of complacency become apparent, where the supply and demand for warehouse space was so out of balance that a lot of 3PLs, or really a lot of e-commerce companies we saw, were having problems with the 3PLs and just not getting the right service. And there was a whole bunch of complacency there. So we saw an opportunity where our brand of customer service could really open up a nice niche, and we could partner with emerging brands, help them scale, help them win, and offer them the right type of flexibility and service that they're looking for.
Yep. Yep. And I know this, Dave, you also have some bigger customers. So you're not limited to just working with the small guys. You can work with the larger companies, and I know you do. I would also say, we'll get into more of this in a minute, but a lot of 3PLs are started by people, the fulfillment 3PLs are started by people who were small brands, or big brands for that matter, who said, the fulfillment guys just don't get it. And it's interesting because you and your partner came from pharma fulfillment. So you were in an adjacent space that the bar is just much higher in that space than it is for all the compliance is much higher. The service level is much higher in that space.
Yeah, to ship anywhere, any different state you ship into, you need a specific license, and you're dealing with a different state board. And like you said, there's a lot of compliance, a lot of paperwork, a lot of regulation. And then just the people you're dealing with too. When you talk about how important an order is, that's someone's medicine that they need the next day. So oftentimes too, it's got to go, can't be late. And someone that does business with you as a customer that's paying you, they're counting on you to get that done. So we're just used to operating like that. So and that's why we thought we'd be a perfect fit for the 3PL space.
Yep. So tell me a little bit about you, Dave. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? Some career highlights before you started EZDC 3PL.
Yeah, so I've lived in Michigan my whole life. I grew up in a town called East Point, just outside of Detroit. I'm currently living in Lake Orion, Michigan, with my wife and 5 children at home. Career highlights. So I attended the University of Michigan, Dearborn, and then afterwards,
Go Blue.
oh yeah, you as well.
Yep. I went to U of M Dearborn at night.
Yeah, and afterwards I had a 20 plus year career in sales, and which ultimately led to executive level, so sales management, procurement side of it as well, and mostly within the medical and the pharmaceutical industry. And then we started EZDC 3PL in late 2022.
Very nice. Very nice. So why did you start EZDC 3PL?
Yeah, we had space, and we were looking at different industries as well. And just over and over, we would encounter these e-commerce companies that were having problems with the 3PL, where they were talking about orders weren't going, communication was a big problem. Like I was mentioning earlier, just the complacency. And we thought about it, and we said, we're used to obviously fulfillment and operating with a sense of urgency, and having to solve problems on the fly when things are critical. And we said we'd be a great fit for this because our brand of customer service, to even survive in the pharma world, your customer service has to be exemplary. So we thought we'd be a great fit. And yeah, we just jumped in and did it.
Yeah. And for anyone listening, you guys still do pharma on the other side of your business. So we're just not talking about it today.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah. I think there's been so much demand. And again, you guys came around at the right time. So many people, brands, as they emerged, they were from homes, right? There were some from small places. And again, the fulfillment starts eating up your business. So if you're an e-commerce company, you probably don't come from logistics or fulfillment. You probably come from online marketing or retailing, something that is more digital. And now, and that's probably something that is very easy for the e-commerce brands, driving traffic to sites, email marketing, all the stuff that you have to do, social media. But the hard part for those companies is when it becomes physical product that has to move. And so I imagine how difficult that is when you're small and saying, hey, we're calling 3PLs, and they're saying, no, thanks, you're too small. And you're like, yeah, but it's driving us crazy and it's limiting our growth. And that's what ends up happening. You've got so many orders that you can't get your day job done because you're doing the fulfillment. And yet most of the 3PLs out there, the fulfillment companies, are saying, thanks, but no thanks. Come back when you have a lot more orders.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like you said, it's like a catch-22, right? Because it's fine to get started, right? And you ship orders out of your home or wherever you're at. But as you start to grow and scale, you want to be spending your time on the revenue generating aspects of your business. You don't want to be picking orders. And as you grow too, the fulfillment can become so complex for these small brands to where you're having to manage the inventory, obviously get the orders out on time. The shipping price, of course, is an issue because if you're not already doing a high volume, you're going to be paying higher rates. So you have all these issues. So it just makes sense to outsource. And then when they try to outsource, oftentimes they'll go to a Google search and the sponsored ads come up, and some of these larger national brands, they try to call them up, and it's they can't get space. They don't have enough of a threshold because there's high minimums, or B, even if they come in, they're just a number. And oftentimes they don't get the right communication. That's the biggest thing we hear. Most of our customers have come from other 3PLs that they haven't been happy with. And the number one reason is just lack of communication. So sometimes too, for us, like the best part is when we have someone say, wow, it's so great working with you. My orders go out on time. I'm able to focus on growing my business. I have my time and my freedom back. And I know if there's an issue, I can contact you and I'm going to get a response quickly. To where when I told you other people said we shouldn't talk to small brands or give personal service, that type of thing. These are entrepreneurs that are trying to grow their business. They're not trying to waste anyone's time. They're busy too, but they just want someone to care and to truly partner with them, because as the fulfillment provider, we are an extension of their business. That's how we approach it. So we want to help our customers win because in turn we win. So let's win together. So when people realize that you do care and you show that by your actions, and from the sales process to the onboarding process to the ongoing customer service process, like we're engaged. And every customer we have, they know, even though I'm the founder and I'm doing a lot of different things, if there's an issue, they can call me anytime and I'll be available. And even if I can't get to them right away, I always get back to them. And if there's an issue, I'm available.
Yeah, I think also, Dave, we talked about this when we were prepping. If you're a really small company and you're going to a 3PL, an e-commerce fulfillment company, one of the challenges sometimes is there is an expectation by certain e-commerce fulfillment companies that say you have an ops team on your side, so you're not going to lean too much on us. I understand that mindset. Again, there's a good reason why some companies say we have minimum order sizes. It's become harder and harder because I hear from small brands who call me and say, Joe, no one will take us. And it is, to your point, a catch-22, because you're like, how do we grow if we can't delegate some of this to a partner and free us up to grow the brand? And they are going to need a little more hand-holding sometimes, a little more guidance sometimes. And they might not have a large ops team that you can interact with. But you guys have gotten used to that as you grew your business.
Yeah, like you said, right? They're not necessarily have deep experience in the business, so they are going to need some guidance. And a lot of times they ask us, "What do you think?" And how should we do this? And we approach it as a collaborative to where, again, we're partnering with them. So we let them know what's going to make it most efficient from our standpoint and our team's time. And also we want to know specifically what they need so they can continue to grow and scale. And we don't want to have to constantly interact and go over every little detail, but at the same time, we set the ground rules up front. And if we need to be flexible, we are. And that's worked out very well for us thus far.
Everybody needs a niche. And again, I know you guys work with larger brands, and there's nobody who's going to outgrow you. So that's a good thing. But there is something to be said for taking on a smaller brand and then growing with them. And what's happened to a lot of the customers, I talked to you the other day at lunch, you said a lot of these customers, they were small and felt like that they didn't fit in the bigger company because they're the 800th biggest customer there. And they weren't getting the attention that allowed them to grow.
Yeah, like you wouldn't believe some of the store, like they have an urgent issue with the orders not going, and literally they can only communicate by email, and like the response time is like a week. That's crazy. And look, like you said, larger brands and they operate differently, and but the oftentimes the larger they get, the less flexible they can be or they will be. So that opens up an opportunity
Yeah.
for us. And again, we want to help them grow, and we want the customers to continue to thrive and build. And everybody has to start somewhere. We started somewhere. Many great companies have had humble beginnings. So we don't look down on customers whatsoever.
Yep. And you built your ops team around this. I know you have a few locations when we talked about Maryland, Kentucky, and New Jersey. I know you said you built your ops team, you built in some flexibility so you can support these guys. And your philosophy is in 10 years, these little brands won't all be little anymore. And you'll probably lose some along the way as they go out of business or priorities change. But there's a good chance if they do a good job on the fulfillment, or you do a good job on fulfillment, they'll be around and they'll be much bigger. And that's a good way to go. And there's something to be said for that loyalty that, hey, that guy was here. He took my phone call when other people are telling me to get lost.
Yeah, people always remember how you made them feel. We always want to let the customer know that we care, and particularly, and again, I talk to a lot of brands, not just the ones that have joined, but numerous calls every day. My calendar is pretty heavy, so I'm always talking to people, and I hear that over and over again, the challenges they're having. So we just want to be a solution for emerging brands when they realize that we can truly partner with them and help their business grow in a way that works for both of us.
So I know these companies have growing pains. What are some of the typical growing pains with some of these smaller e-commerce brands?
As they start to grow and as they add more products too, if they're doing it in-house, managing inventory can be very tricky, to where you have to have the right software system set up, and these aren't cheap. And then you have to obviously manage it. Labor is a challenge for everybody today, but particularly if you're a small company and you're starting self-fulfilling, then you have to grow and scale. A is finding the labor, and then B is managing it.
So what are some of the challenges once they join you?
They get to outsource all that. They get to utilize our software, which they have full visibility on their whole catalog, all the orders, all the inventory, all the shipments, one-click tracking. We can hook up directly to their Shopify or whatever platform they're using to feed orders through, so that makes it easy. And then, yeah, they don't have to worry about if someone didn't show up, how are the orders going to go? They're not doing it themselves and turning their whole day upside down. We manage all of that.
Yeah, but once they come on to you, they say, so I know this, since COVID, a lot of e-commerce brands have taken a step back, especially the high profile ones. You're working with the smaller guys, but I'm sure some of them have taken a little bit of a hit with people not at home ordering like crazy online. What are some of the issues you're seeing with these companies as you work with them?
Yeah, again, like the volumes can be spiky and some of the markets go up and down, cost and everything becomes all that much more important. Many of them too, right? They don't necessarily want to pay a rent like on a building, and then have to, with the inflation too, look what it takes to secure employees. So that's a concern. And then again, managing employees is not for everybody. So there's all types of things that can go wrong. So if you're doing it all yourself, some people can execute that very well, but most, it's a huge headache. So just the ability to outsource it for brands is is a big benefit. And oftentimes too, right, if they're at that point where they're self-fulfilling and they're not sure and they say, oh, what's it going to cost? They may see it as just particularly, they might have to give up some margin in some cases, but when they get back their time and their freedom, and then what that can do for them long term with giving them more bandwidth to focus on higher level activities, that's when they can really start to grow and scale.
You've also turned it into a variable cost, right? So what is a fixed cost? If I have employees that are doing it at my house or in my garage, that's a fixed cost. Once I move it to you guys, I've moved it to a variable cost, which you get, I'm assuming it's getting charged per order as opposed to having to keep all my costs constant, even when things slow down.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then, yeah, like you said, it is variable. So the better they do, or the worse, that cost is reflected in their monthly charge. But yeah, you just eliminate so many unknowns and so many potential landmines if you're doing it yourself and you're managing that staff. And again, right, if you're thinking about how you're going to grow, it takes a lot in addition to everything you need to do to compete with as competitive as e-commerce is these days.
Yep. So I know you have a wide variety of customers. Give us a sense for the type of customers you work with.
Yeah, so we have some apparel, we have some beauty, we have some nutritional supplements, some home goods. That's the majority of it. So just smaller items that can move quick. That's really what we look for ideally.
That's what is e-commerce. And again, it's a little different in that you guys are receiving, I take it, pallets in.
Usually, yeah, usually pallets and so yeah, sometimes cases.
Yep. And then you're shipping usually out via parcel.
Yeah, a lot of small parcels. Yeah, a lot of DHL and e-com and UPS, that type of thing.
Now, are you also able to move via freight? I know we talked the other day, you talked about doing some over-the-road transportation. Please explain what you guys are doing in that space.
Yeah, yes. We do move freight, so LTL or full truckload. And we do that now through my partnership with SPI Logistics. And Joe, you actually introduced me to those guys.
Oh, yeah. That was like a year ago.
Yeah.
Nice.
And an interesting story because when customers come to us and they want us to handle their fulfillment, oftentimes they don't want to deal with other parts of the logistics too, such as when they need to move freight. So they would ask us, "Hey, I need to send some pallets, whether into us or somewhere else." And we didn't have any component like that at the time. So I would go to other freight brokers and set my customers up. And a couple times too, there was just a very poor experience where it was not good and our customers were upset. And I saw that. I was like, this can't happen. So I started looking for a way I could control the customer experience. That's when you set me up with the guys at SPI.
Yeah, I like that. So I'll put a link to my interview with Joe Chandler. He's the president over there. And yeah, we both know Mike, I think it's McCulloch up there in Vancouver, but they're in Canada, a lot of them, but most of their business and most of their agents are here in the US. They go over the border, obviously, but they're huge. They're one of the largest freight brokerages in America, and they have an agent model that allows people like you who are in fulfillment to grow your business. But also there's tons of freight brokers who are like, I want to start my own business. And I say it all the time. If you ask me to start a freight brokerage today, I would reach out to a company like SPI. No sense reinventing the wheel. They already have a really nice wheel.
Yeah, they have an incredible wheel. They've been in business 45 years. So clearly they're doing something right. And they have 30,000 plus approved carriers, all modes of transportation. They have one central point of control where they monitor everything 24/7, and they have a lot of safeguards in place to protect against all the fraud and all the double brokering that's going on right now. But it's excellent rates, and they have a phenomenal support staff for all aspects of the transaction. And then it allows me to do what I do best, is just the customer interaction, where I can give that personal service. I can get people the answers they need immediately, 30 seconds, and I can have an expert on the phone anytime and to help with an issue if there is one. So it's just been an excellent experience, and it helps us give our customers a whole other level of value.
I do think I've two minds of this. Sometimes I say, I think there's 27,000 freight brokers. There was 30,000 freight brokers a year ago. And so we lost 3,000. And that's difficult for everyone who went through it. But I always have wondered aloud, will we have fewer freight brokers in a decade or so? And I think we'll have fewer companies. Like we'll have the SPIs of the world, and there's others. There are lots of really good transportation companies out there and lots of good freight brokerages. But I keep thinking that the best companies get better and better at ops. They're making the investments they need to make. And again, I keep thinking that the customer facing, like you're doing right now, you have a whole bunch of customers who say, I need help already. So you've got built-in customer base. So it's been really good for you. And I know you're working with beyond just your customers. I know other people are reaching out to you. And if you're listening, please reach out to Dave. But I keep thinking the top companies have such efficiencies and their unit cost is better than the average freight broker working from their basement.
Yeah. The power that SPI has for being in business 45 years and all the carriers and all the loads that they move and the network they've built is great. And their values align with our values as well. So it was really just a perfect partnership.
Yep. I'll put a link to my interview with Joe Chandler. I saw Joe Chandler last year at TMSA. I talked to him for a little while. He made some introductions that really worked out well for me. And I just talked to the founder of SPI. I talked to Mitch the other day on the phone. So small world that we live in here. So anyway, Dave, I want to summarize, then I want to get your final thoughts on the topic. So we're talking about fulfillment for emerging e-commerce brands. And there's a challenge when we talk about small e-commerce brands, emerging e-commerce brands. They're all hoping to continue to grow, but they get in this catch-22, you called it, which that is they can't grow because they're being overwhelmed by fulfillment, which they're not particularly good at. They don't have the software for it. They don't have the space for it. They aren't inventory management experts. And a lot of companies in the space no longer want to work with them because they do require a little more hand-holding, a little more guidance, an extra phone call. They need a little extra customer service that not every company is set up to deliver, which is fine. There's someone for everyone out there. So the minimum orders are too high for those companies. And your philosophy is a little different. Your philosophy is we're going to take on some smaller e-commerce brands and we're going to grow with them. We're going to do a phenomenal job and they're never going to want to leave us. So in addition, you built your team and your ops team so you can accommodate this, which is important because there are peaks and valleys. And again, there is a little extra hand-holding and you need to be ready for it. Why don't you put a big old bow on this one, Dave? Final thoughts on the topic.
Yeah. Again, if you are an emerging e-commerce brand and you need help with fulfillment, whether you're doing it in-house, it's a headache. You don't know what to do. And if you've tried to talk to other 3PLs and maybe they've turned you away, or maybe you haven't had a pleasant experience, maybe you're with a 3PL and you're not happy. That's a huge part of the market as well. I think the stats say 60% plus of 3PL customers are not happy. And we talk to many of them. Yeah. EZDC 3PL, we aim to remove the headache of fulfillment from emerging e-commerce brands. So we give fast response time, flexibility, personal service, and we're here to help our customers win. So let's win together.
Yep. And I'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile. I'll put a link to your website and any other links you give me, Dave, I'll put in the show notes. And what conferences will we see you and the EZDC 3PL people at?
Oh, man. So we're trying to figure out third quarter. We've had a busy show season already. So I was at Cosmoprof Miami. I was at BGSA. I was at Manifest. I was at Expo West. I was at the IWLA annual convention. So we're literally working on that right now. But yeah, we hit the circuit and we go to a lot of the major shows. And right now we have a lot of not only leads and then new customers we're working with. It's just been a busy time, but we'll definitely be hitting some more within.
Dave, I think given your daughter's equestrian, your boys are in travel baseball and other sports, I think your wife probably told you can't go away this summer.
Yeah, logistics. Yeah, she's the real star of logistics with everything we have going on at home. But yeah, listen, I love to get out there and meet people, meet new people, network, and particularly customers or potential customers. So yeah, that's one of the parts of this I really enjoy is getting out to these shows and meeting everyone.
Yep. And we'll make sure we put a link to your podcast one more time. What is your podcast? Who do you talk to?
So it's called the Beyond Fulfillment Podcast, and we spotlight entrepreneurs and talk about their journey and what it's really, and just provide valuable wisdom and stories about what other people have gone through. And the reason too is I would go to these shows and network a lot, and I talked to so many other founders, and hearing their stories was extremely helpful for me with all the challenges I've been through on my founder's journey. So I thought, why not put a platform together where we can have these conversations and provide a story for others where they can see, wow, other people are going through these same challenges, and wow, if they can do it, I can do it. So it's that type of a vibe to a show, but it's got great response. Check out our YouTube channel. Please link that as well. And yeah, stay tuned.
Definitely. If you give it to me, I'll put it in the show notes. Dave, it's funny you should mention talking about these entrepreneurs and their stories. And I feel this way is that when you're young, you just go, oh, he has something I don't have. The reason Dave does what Dave does, because he's gifted. He knows something, or he knows someone, or whatever. We always have these ideas of why we're not quite there yet, or as soon as I get a little more experience, or as soon as this happens, I'm going to somehow be that guy. But when you talk to entrepreneurs, and I'm talking to one right now, when you talk to the entrepreneurs and you realize, hey, they don't have this perfect path. They don't have the perfect everything usually. What they're willing to do is work hard and be persistent and fail, and then fail again and keep failing, and at some point succeed. But I talk to a ton of entrepreneurs, and that's been my experiences. It's refreshing to find out that so many people who are just regular people who kept trying and have been successful. And I think that's why the podcasts are great, because we all want to hear those stories.
Yeah, and like you said, perfection is a myth. The real key to success is to just start and keep showing up, to learn by doing, fail. Obviously, you can't be afraid to fail, and then keep iterating and keep getting better, and apply that consistency. And look, I never thought I would be a podcaster until the idea popped in my head one day. I took action and ran with it. And now 7 months later, we've dropped, I don't know, close to 40 episodes. I've got a whole bunch more recorded, bunch more booked. So that's what happens when you just can take action and keep showing up. Good things happen.
I told you this the other day when we were having lunch. I think is it Jesse Isler?
Jesse Itzler, yeah.
Itzler, yeah. So he's married to Sarah
Blakely. Yeah, Sarah Blakely.
Yeah, who founded Spanx. But he is an interesting guy. And by the way, he's interesting. You see him on stage where he's giving talks. He's dressed like he's working in his yard, literally. And I've seen him. He's got his own podcast. One of the things he said was, if you look on Apple iTunes, there's 2 million podcasts, and 25% of them have one episode, and 60% of them have less than 10. And you and I were talking about this the other day, is you had no expectations that anything would happen at 10 episodes, nor did I. You just go, yeah, you just keep doing it. You do it, you do it. And at some point, hopefully something works out. I figure out what I'm doing. But Jesse was making the point that, what are you doing quitting after 10? You should keep growing and keep doing it. But again, it's a little bit of the challenge that podcasting has had. Lots of room out there, fellas, gals.
Yeah, again, you just got to keep showing up, right? And it's amazing what consistency can do. And as you continue to get those reps in, you learn, you get better, you start to develop like the unconscious competence. And then that's where you can really start to make gains as you continue to show up.
Yep. You got to be consistent before you can be good. Anyway, Dave, thank you so much for taking the time. We talked about this a year ago, so I'm glad to finally get you on the podcast.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me, Joe. I really appreciate this platform. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks again, Dave. And thank all of you for listening to my podcast. Your support's very much appreciated. Until next time, onward and upward. You have been listening to the Logistics of Logistics podcast, where we engage with leaders in the logistics and supply chain community. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave us a nice review on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you listen. Also, please check out our videos on YouTube and connect with us on LinkedIn. We're very big on LinkedIn. And you can also reach us on the logisticsoflogistics.com, our website.